And we are live with Mr. Chris Doyle. How's it going, dude?
Going good, man.
Yeah? Got the
Sorry to be
PBJ?
eating a peanut butter and jelly, but haven't eaten much today. I'm pretty hungry.
Sometimes you have those days.
Yeah.
They just happen, you know? And I feel like I can relate a lot to that. How'd your day go today?
Um, Busy. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm with my 3-year-old pretty much all day, unless I have something that absolutely I have to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
But I get my daughter to and from school every day, and just busy with the kids, and also like trying to work. Um, Going through a transaction right now that's a little bit stressful, and just it's been a lot of like emailing back and forth and trying to schedule contractors and coordinate with the list agent and my buyer, and then the list agent has to coordinate with the seller. So it's a lot of like it's a big dance right now. So yeah, so a lot of work today on top of being with the kids most of the day too.
Which is a job in itself.
Yeah, especially with my son. He's a handful. I love him to death, but man, he's got a lot of energy.
Yeah, well, that's what kids do. They have energy and they let it loose.
Yeah. Hey, I don't want to start this off on like a sad note or whatever, but I wanted to offer you and your crew and that whole scene my deepest heartfelt condolences to the loss of Ray. Um, that is such a huge tragic loss to all of you guys, and I knew Ray. I didn't know him nearly as well as you guys did, but it's such a great dude, and really gonna miss seeing him when I go to the parks in Ohio, or when he'd come to the jams at Potosny's. And um,
Mm-hmm.
seriously, like awesome guy, and I'm sorry that you guys all lost him. Um, my heart goes out to you guys, because that was huge. I was really sad to hear about that. Just me and Ray always talked about our kids. Like when we'd see each other, he's like, "Hey, how are your kids doing?" I'm like, "How are your kids doing?" Because his kids were a little bit older than my oldest daughter. And I remember when my daughter was born, he hit me up to say congrats, and I'm like, "Dude, how do you do this with two kids?" I'm stressing with one, and he's like, "Yeah, man, you take it a day at a time. You just love them to death." And um, that was always where we would start our conversations, and then we'd get into riding. So yeah, like I said, great dude. I wish I knew him better, but one of those dudes you talk to for like 5 minutes, you feel like you knew him for the last 20 years, So um, yeah, like I said, to you and your viewers, your crew, like nothing but the best moving forward right now.
Yeah, I think everybody who hears that will appreciate it. I mean, you hit it right on the head. Ray treated literally everyone like a best friend. Like, doesn't matter who you were, where you were from, or what. If you're around, didn't matter if it was even bikes. Like, he's just gonna treat you exactly the same as everyone else.
Yeah, always with the big smile. And
Yep.
I put up the video that you posted,
Mm-hmm.
and my buddy hit me up. He's like, "I definitely remember that dude's smile." That was like the only thing he said. I'm like, "Yeah, like that was
Yeah.
Ray."
When I was editing that, there was a clip. There was a couple of clips of him bailing on that Chenga 2 grind to flat, and he's literally got that smile on as he's falling to the ground. You can see
Yeah,
it in the video, and it's like that right there is just like encapsulated into my mind forever.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to start this off on a weird note. I just wanted to say that moving forward,
Yeah,
because I know you guys were close. So
I appreciate that, and
yeah,
we can we can take it the other way. We wanted to take it before getting into just a casual conversation too, I suppose, just to get that out of the way. Um, how do we approach this? I guess what I want to know, more or less, because everyone knows about the drama and the crap that went on last week in the Instagram BMX world. I guess what I more or less think would tell enough of the story is just like talk about how the S&M thing came up and even happened and what it is for that matter.
um, so how'd the whole thing come up, man? It was a lot of people just kind of talking amongst them, like the a lot of people that were affiliated with S&M just kind of talking amongst themselves. And like, I think it reached the boiling point when at the Fit video premiere, Biz was drunkenly talking to Moeller and Melissa Buckley
Mm-hmm.
about, or I guess Melissa Moeller. He was talking to Chris and Melissa about. He's like, "Why don't we get Doyle on S&M?" And they're just both like, "Yeah, like that's the perfect fit. That'd be great. Yeah." Like, and then like kind of whispers went to Stu Johnson, who's kind of like my unofficial team manager now. But and everyone just kind of was like, "Yeah, that makes total sense. Like that makes perfect sense. We should do that." And then eventually I talked to Melissa on the phone, and she's like, "Yeah, let's do this." Oh, and I made an appearance on the Hallahan's 9 Acres
Oh
video,
yeah, yeah,
in which I'm teaching Lucas how to do tail whips,
yeah. I remember that one.
and she thought that was awesome. She's like, I saw that, and I was like, we got to get Chris on S&M. So, and if you want to rewind even beyond that, like for the last couple of years of my professional career, anytime I would see Moeller at like an event, he would be like, "Oh, you're like the S&M B team," because every time, like, if my bike got lost by the airline or if my bike broke or something, I would ride like Brian Foster's bike, or I would
Mm.
ride like Clint Reynolds' bike. I'd ride like an S&M or a Fit. He's like, "Oh, you're like the B team," and I remember I had this S&M seat post clamp on my bike, and he's like, "Doyle, that's going to be a good clamp. That'll hold that tall seat post in place." And he was like always kind of busting my balls, but he's sitting on my bike one time, and he's like, "Man, this is what a BMX bike is supposed to feel like." And I took that as a huge, huge compliment.
Yeah.
And we'd always just kind of pal around at comps or jams or wherever I'd see him. And then when like this all started happening, like everyone just was in agreement that it just made total sense. And yeah, so we just went for it. And everything that you saw in that video was 100% true. Um, like I was riding in S&M Homes before I got sponsored by DK, and
Mm.
uh, that was like kind of the dream when I was 15, was to ride for S&M. But of course, things went in a different direction, and I don't think I would have had the same career if that dream came true right off the bat. But I was certainly happy with how everything came to be with me and S&M. And yeah, um, it's not. I'm not. I guess I'm on the team,
Yeah.
but I'm not like, when I talked to Melissa, it was basically like, I said, I don't have time to be a pro rider. I don't have time to film a video part. I don't have time to like have a strong social media presence. Like I'm a full-time father, husband, real estate agent, and I ride when I have the time. So she's like, that's cool. We just want you to keep doing what you're doing BMX wise, but do it on an S&M.
Yeah.
And I said, awesome, done. Um, And instead of just like starting to get flow, everyone was like in agreement. Like, let's have some fun with this. Let's like make a replica of that old bike that you had. Let's make a video. Let's do a bike check. Like, let's have fun. Let's blow this out. And that's exactly what we did. And it got great response.
Yeah. Yeah. That video was amazing, and so that puts you like on the team. Uh, the question: you're not getting paid by S&M, are you?
No, and I guess that can bring us into the next thing. But no, I haven't cashed a check to ride BMX since 2018. And I would feel terrible if S&M was paying me, because I'm not going to be doing a lot to earn that paycheck. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like I said, my priorities are fatherhood, husband, real estate agent, and then just riding when I have the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I feel like that in itself is probably enough to clear the air from what was said on the internet and all of the people's reactions to it.
Um, I guess. I mean, and the people should know that Ricky and I talked on the phone after uh, after everything came out online with the podcast that they have, or they had. He called me and we talked, and I have no hatred towards Ricky. I have no animosity. I wasn't even mad. There was people out there that were way more mad than I was.
Right.
Um, don't ever get on the bad side of Mike Cottle or
That comment. I know exactly what you're talking about.
or Keith Terra.
Yeah.
Because and I'm pretty sure Keith was joking, but like Keith hit me up. He's like, dude, you want me to take care of this? And I'm like, no. He's like, no, man, just I can take care of this. He's like, I'll call Wild Matt, and we can take care of this. And I'm like, stay down. And then Cottle was just enraged, and but I wasn't that mad. I was more disappointed than anything.
Yeah.
Because I've met Ricky before, and I've never had a bad thing to say. I've never had really much of an opinion at all.
Yeah.
And when he called me, he was very apologetic, and he was like, sometimes I speak before I think. My mouth will move faster than my brain. I'm so sorry. And I'm a grown man. I don't need an apology. I didn't need him to make an apology. I appreciated him doing that. But I stayed pretty firm. When I talked to him on the phone, I stood my ground. I was like, hey, man, yeah, you need to think. And if you have a podcast in which people are going to be listening to you, you need to make sure you have all your facts straight. And he didn't. And that was what kind of pissed me off the most. And, he used me as an example, as an analogy to describe how owners and team managers are out of touch. Well, the owner of S&M is Chris Moeller, who, in my opinion, Moeller's like top 3, top 5 most influential BMXers of all time.
Yeah. And
he's run a brand his way for for most of his life.
Yeah.
And S&M has never played by the rules, right? Like S&M's never followed like what conventional BMX is going to do. Like, and I think that's why so many people were attracted to that brand. They're like the punk rock, anti-authority. We're not conforming to everything else. We're doing this our way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people love the brand so much. And, for them to bring on an older, when has the S&M team ever been like, yeah, I agree with every rider that rides for S&M? Like, that's never going to happen.
Or any team for that matter.
So, and so that's why I thought, like, if I had got on a different brand, it might have, been like, okay, what's that brand doing? What's Doyle doing? But I thought S&M made total sense. And I wouldn't have ridden for any other brand, honestly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, stepped away from Kink, which I appreciated everything that I was doing with Kink and they did for me. But like, I wouldn't have stepped away from that for any other brand.
Right.
And so that's the owner of S&M. And then the team manager, like I said before, for me, I know that Charlie Crumlish is, a TM as well. But for me, I've worked mostly with Stu Johnson since I've been on S&M.
Okay.
And you can't say anything bad about Stu Johnson.
Yeah.
For me, and this is just in my world, I think he's put out the best content in the last 25 years. And he still continues to do so. And, he's still sleeping on couches and riding the Greyhound and going to the trails to get more footage. He's truly poured his life into this. And so I took that, okay, the owner and the TM, you got Moeller and Stu, and he's using me as the analogy. I'm like, no, like, I don't agree with this at all. Yeah. And that's why I posted it and I said, I think this is bullshit. And apparently a lot of people agreed. And so, and I even talked to Crandall a little bit, and he's like, yeah, that's a lot of history to like try to drag through the mud. So
right.
That was my stance on it, and I thought I was pretty lighthearted about it. I didn't want to talk shit on him. I didn't want to make fun of him. I used that My Cousin Vinny clip to say, like, everything that guy just said is bullshit.
Yeah, and it was perfect.
And that's how I felt. And nothing I'm telling you, I didn't already tell Ricky when we were talking on the phone.
Yeah.
And he did say on YouTube in one of the comments about me getting paid. And I'm like, no, that's a false fact that you just put in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't appreciate that. And um, and I have a podcast, which I
Yeah.
neglect, and I
You
apologize
still
to
have
everyone.
it though.
I still have it, and I've edited audio countless times.
Mm-hmm.
And when something doesn't sound right, like if I try to make a point and it doesn't sound right, I cut it out because
Right.
I don't want it to come across wrong. And in fact, I had a guest on my podcast, and I'm not going to name names, but I had a guest, and he was trying to make a point about something about how riders boost themselves up with social media, and he used the name. There's the name of a really badass rider, one of the top dudes right now.
Yeah.
He dropped this name to make his point, and I'm sitting in the room with him. I got his point, but not everyone that listens to the podcast is going to understand his point of view. So I was driving home, and I'm listening to the podcast, and like, my guest does not sound good on
Yeah.
this. Like, he's going to come across all wrong. So I got home, I downloaded it, I sent him a copy of the interview, and I go, hey man, I want you to listen to this, and I want you to tell me if you think I should leave this in. I let him listen to it, and he goes, I come across so wrong, please cut that out. So I did.
Yeah.
And everyone loved the interview. But so then I was thinking about the podcast with Ricky and is it Dustin? Is he the other kid? I was like, so you had to have listened to that before. Like, other eyes had to have seen that before you dropped it. Like, not one person says, like, guys, that doesn't sound right. Like, no one said that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was like, how did that make it to the final cut? Like, that's
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll try to wrap it up because, again, I don't want any harm to come to the guy. I don't want him to lose a job. I don't want, like, we can stop being mean to Ricky online, but
Yeah.
you just gotta. That's my PSA. Think before you speak.
Yeah.
And get the facts straight before you drop knowledge on people, and that's it. Like I said, I wasn't really mad about it. I didn't have a lot of time to really be mad at it, but a lot of people were pretty upset.
Yeah, and the only reason that like we're really even bringing it up in our conversation is just the fact that there it ended up blowing up to a point where there could have like been genuine real world implications to this entire thing, and it all was based on misinformation being put out there. So we both kind of felt like it was important to just clear the air a little bit.
And Ricky already cleared the air. Ricky, he called me. I wasn't available. I called him back. He's like, "You got a couple minutes?" I was like, "Yeah, let's talk." And I felt very much like a dad,
Yeah.
talking to a kid. Like, "Hey, you got to think before you speak." I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. It's just like full on like dad status, and and again, he was very apologetic, and I didn't need an apology, but I appreciated him, manning up, making the call,
Yeah.
and kind of he owned it. He owned what he said. He's like, I can't take it back at this point, but
Right.
he owned it. Yeah, that was that.
Well, I feel like that pretty much and pretty well covers that entire subject in the whole. So if you've got nothing else about it, we can just move on and talk about BMX and other things.
Sure thing, man. Yeah.
All right. So I've got one thing that came up today at Ray's that I really, really wanted to ask you about, because I was riding with Trevor today, and Trevor was talking about how he's recently been feeling somewhat like nervous and scared while riding his bike. And that's part of why he went to a full face helmet. And we kind of talked for a minute about like, yeah, I mean, I know what that feels like too. And I'm like in my thinking spot where I feel like the universe connects me to the ideas. That's the shower. And I realized like you might be a perfect person to ask about how you've like gotten through that, if you've ever experienced that where you're like, you go through and it feels like it's for no reason. It's not like you had a really crazy crash. It's just like randomly feeling nervous and weird or scared riding your bike.
Um, that usually happens to me after like I see someone else slam.
Yeah.
After like I felt like that for a long time after Mikey's accident,
Yeah.
if I'm being totally honest, because to me there was never anyone with more bike control, never anyone that was more skilled than Mikey Aiken, and to know of him having a huge slam like that and to have that head trauma, it just made me realize like it doesn't really matter how good you are, like it anything can happen to anybody. And I remember like I had that in my head for a long time after his accident.
Yeah.
Probably like close to like 6 months. Like I remember feeling anytime I'd step on my bike, I remember thinking like, it can happen to anybody. Like
Right.
anyone can take a detrimental slam at any time. So I definitely felt like that. I don't know how I overcame it. I think it was just time and uh, just being patient with myself. And like if I did feel too nervous, I just wouldn't ride.
Mm.
And just letting time kind of heal that wound, I guess. And then realizing like it wasn't. Then when I had my situation in 2018 with my heart, I was like, whoa! This whole time I thought it was going to be something on my bike when it really wasn't. Like I
Yeah.
could have been jogging in the forest and I could have just completely died. Like so, you just never know. Like you could walk across the street and get hit by a car and be totally jacked up. Like it's. I realized that it was being nervous and being scared wasn't really a good way to be living.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live like that, you almost like will things to happen sometimes. So I don't want to say I've blocked it out, but I think I've just gotten better at like kind of coping with there's dangers in every aspect of life. And yeah, to ride nervous is really crappy. So
Yeah.
I just try to enjoy what I'm doing, focus on like the fun aspect of it, be cognizant of what's happening around me, and yeah, just kind of let it rip. I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but
I mean, that's your experience. So that's as good of an answer as you could really give. And to relate a little bit to that, I felt anxious with just like not myself riding, but watching other people ride ever since my buddy, the guy who owns the trails out here, he got knocked out at the skate park. And it was just like, oh my God, because I never seen like someone really, really get knocked out like that before, where he's like laying on the ground snoring and like, arms are stiffened up, like bad knockout. And ever since then, I just randomly will get nervous. It's more, not as much with people who are like, been riding for a long time anymore. At first it was, but now, man, when I'm at Ray's watching little kids ride in the Subaru room, it like freaks me out every time almost. And I think the only way to get over it is to just watch and just force yourself to like tune in and like they're fine, they're doing fine.
yeah, yeah. It's best not to force yourself into anything as well. Like if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. Don't force yourself to like do something stupid. Don't
Right.
Just because you have your camera set up and you're trying to get those Instagram clips. Don't ever bleed for Instagram.
God, yeah. Try not to bleed for anything. Try to prevent those.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good insight onto it, just from someone who has done everything you've done. And when you've ridden for long enough, I feel like no matter what, you're going to go through periods where you feel a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens, I think.
There's been times when I've ridden all day, like rode gnarly trails or something, and took chances and did gnarly things, and then that night I'm like walking off a curb and I'll roll my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the universe is going to get you one way or another.
Yeah. And since we talked about the universe, I meant to tell you about this before we went live, but I had 2 of those moments that we talked about on the phone today. First one, so I'm listening to a podcast on my way to Ray's, and they randomly start talking about skunks. And within the first 30 seconds of this conversation, the dude goes, "Skunks are effective." He said that as I'm driving by a dead skunk on the road. I was like, that's a little weird. So on my way home, same podcast, same people, randomly they said something about Panera Bread. And and it was only one time that it came up, and he only said it one time. The skunk thing, they talked for like 5 minutes, so whatever. I could have were driven by a skunk in that period of time. But the Panera Bread thing, I was literally driving through the intersection where I would turn to go into Panera Bread in my town when he said that word.
It's like the Truman Show or something. How that he's like adjusting the radio, and it's like all the like advertisements for everything he's seeing. It's like
yeah, dude, it was weird. And after we talked about that, I'm like, man, I gotta tell him about that because it just keeps happening.
Yeah, no, it happens all the time. I'll be thinking about a song, and it'll come on the radio. I'm like, what? Or I have like thousands of songs on my iPhone, and I'll just be randomly thinking of a song, and it'll pop up. I'm like, whoa, like
yep.
Telepathy. So yeah,
the person you're thinking about texts or calls you.
Yeah
That's a weird one for me, and happens way too much. Maybe not too much. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I literally have like all these bullet points for things that I just never usually have. Have I ever asked you before about the session that you had with Brian? Is it Yeagle or Yeagle?
Yeagle.
With Brian Yeagle at Evolution Skate Park in Ohio?
I don't know, maybe.
Do you remember this session?
Yeah, I do, because I've only been there once.
Do you remember me or Sponge from that session?
No, I don't. What?
No, it just Sponge and I were at Evo, that's what we called it, and we're just sitting on the deck of the flow room in there, the one with the camel hump boxes that Brian Yeagle was going to the ceiling in. I'm sure you remember that.
That skinny pillar.
Yeah.
It was going all the way. Yeah.
Yep.
I've told people about that before. And I mean, that's total Yeagle style. But when people aren't used to seeing Brian ride, they're like blown away. Like, yeah, that thing.
It was a foot. Yeah, it was probably a foot.
This
maybe
wide, and he rides straight up it to the ceiling and then back down it.
Yep. Multiple times too.
Yeah. I saw a Yeagle. The first time I actually saw him in person was in. We went to his trails in the year 2000, 22 years ago.
Crazy, and,
right? Me and Craig Reynolds, and because Steve Buddendeck needed to shoot a photo of Craig Reynolds for, because Snap used to do the pull-out posters. So Craig Reynolds was on Mongoose, and they needed to shoot a Mongoose picture for this pull-out. And so I just kind of tagged along because we were at Gravity Games, which is happening in Rhode Island. So it was like, 2-hour drive or something like that. So we go to Suffield, and there's Brian Yeagle, and he's got like bowl cut, and he looks like a normal kid. And I knew who Yeagle was just from growing up on the East Coast. Like, there's always like echoes, and like you'd hear things that he'd done, you'd hear things about him, but you never saw footage, you never saw photos. And like, oh my God, there he is! It's like seeing a ghost. And he's at his home trails, and he was riding this line, and the line ended with a tree ride with a dirt quarter going straight up a tree. And he hit like a 25-foot set and then go straight up a tree and straight back down. I kid you not. And me and Craig Reynolds looked at each other like, did we just see the same thing? It's like, it was so bizarre. Like, because he didn't just go like a couple feet up the tree. He went like 15 feet up the tree and straight back down. Like, I kid you not. It's like, but that was like, I was like, well, now I have my like Yeagle myth story, because like you'd always hear things like that, but you never saw it.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, oh my God, I saw it. Like, I actually witnessed it. There's no cameras.
Right.
Like, even I think later on, like Bud and Dex shot some stuff of me. Craig Reynolds didn't ride because the place is crazy. And then I think he asked Yeagle, like, hey, do you want to shoot a few things? And Yeagle's like, nah, I'm good. It's like, no, we need to like prove the myth. Like we saw
Yeah,
Bigfoot.
right.
But yeah. But I do remember a little bit about riding Evolution because I'd only been there that one time, and it's hard when you go to a spot with Yeagle because Yeagle adapts very fast. And
Yeah.
just like you get mad because you're not adapting that fast, and I wasn't as good at riding the bull as he was in the first 5 minutes. So
Yep.
stuff like that was always tough.
That was something I was gonna bring up in this whole thing, is because we were in the flow room. It was Sponge and I were sitting next to each other, and he just all of a sudden out of nowhere goes, "Is that Chris Doyle?" And my response was, "Who?" Because this was at a point in time, like we had just started filming videos together, so at that point we had probably had one video that made it onto the come up, and like we were stoked. I didn't even know who Adam 22 is when he posted our video on the come up, so like for some context there. But so I'm just like, who? And then you guys end up in there riding with us, and what I was gonna say was that how Brian just immediately took to the room, was blasting everything to the ceiling. Those little camel hump things had like they were volcanoed out on the sides of them, and all I can remember is him like skidding his back tire as he's going over that, and then still airing the quarter or the vert wall to the ceiling.
The best way to describe Yeagle and his riding is, and there's a couple guys like this, probably like Yeagle, Derek Gerard, maybe even like Randy Nickerson, and a couple of those New England guys. It's full improv. Like it's full like improvisational. Like, okay, I'm just gonna go in this direction as fast as I can, and I'll hit whatever gets in my way, and I'll figure it out from there.
Mm-hmm.
Like Yeagle and I used to go to the Imperial Skate Park in Pittsburgh, and we'd meet there at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it would just be him and I. No cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And Yeagle would be blasting the 10-foot quarter like 9 feet out for no reason. And he'd be like coming up with these lines and like doing things there that still have not been done. But just because he's like, well, when I ride, I want to ride. I want to feel it. And it was always so refreshing. Like probably one of the best guys you could possibly ride with, because you just never knew what was going to come next. And I think a lot of times he didn't even know what was going to come next.
Yeah.
So it was always really interesting, and it was never for show. It was never. That's why I give Stu Johnson a lot of credit for being able to capture Yeagle in Anthem 2.
Yeah.
Because he's not an easy guy to film with. Like Yeagle would like get his bike out at the skate park and just go start ripping, and like Stu's fumbling to get his camera.
I've heard these stories. God. Yeah.
And so by the time Stu would get in there, Yeagle, he'd be like, okay, Brian, let's film that. And Yeagle's like, film what? that thing you just did. And he's like, okay. And he would like, once Yeagle tried to think about it, it would get so much worse.
Yeah.
Like if you had to plan it out, he's like, I can't like, he couldn't like plan it out. It was really strange. And then like he might get something first try, but maybe Stu didn't like his angle or something. And then after the first try, it would just get progressively worse, until Yeagle's like bailing out at 10 feet.
Oh my gosh.
Getting destroyed. So definitely one of the most interesting people you could ever ride with. And, you know, people would always talk about like, let's get him to a Vans bowl contest. Let's get him to this. I'm like, I don't think he's going to thrive well.
Yeah.
Because he has to plan out a run.
Yeah. It's like constrained. He can't just go whenever he wants to and just do whatever happens.
There's a story, another like Yeagle urban myth story, in which he went to the East Coast Terminal for a contest and didn't ride. And everyone's like, why is it Yeagle riding? We hear all this stuff. And then the contest completely wraps. And Yeagle's riding during the awards ceremony. And they're handing out awards. And Yeagle's blasting through the crowd, like hitting these different transfers. And everyone's like jumping out of the way. And then, like, my friends came home from being at that concert, like, yeah, Yeagle rode, but it was, like, the very last, like, 10 minutes of the weekend. It's like...
That's so cool.
Yeah, just, like, a refreshing take on on BMX, like just full improv, just nothing planned.
So rad. And I mean, thinking back on it, I feel like that makes total sense. And what was so crazy about that was that, like, you walk in and I feel like there's no way I would have made this connection without Sponge, like maybe talking about who you were or something before you guys ended up in there. But I can remember like him instantly going to the ceiling and going crazy, and then you, uh, maybe not as quickly,
No.
figuring that room out. And like there was a point in time where you asked me if you could take my line that I was hitting in that room, and I thought that was awesome. But then there was a certain level of humanizing that happened there where I was like, oh, these guys who are like at the top in BMX, they are human. Like they don't just show up here and just tear the place to shreds because yeah,
Yeah, I'm not. I need time. I need time to figure things out.
normal people do.
And yeah, normal people like, but a guy like Yeagle, a guy like Chase Hawk, Jeff Slattery, like those dudes, they're tough to travel with because they can just figure things out so fast.
Yeah.
When the first time I was on a trip with Chase was Road Fools 14, and we're riding the Little Devil Bowl, and I came in like I was maybe changing a tire or something, and I come in like 10 minutes after everybody, and Chase is just like all over the bowl, and I said to I forget who I asked. I'm like, oh, has Chase been here before? And they're like, no, dude, he just dropped in and just knew every line. I'm like, whoa. And he was young. Like, he hadn't quite become Chase Hawk yet. And I was like, whoa, he's special. And then, like, that whole trip, like, everything with transition, he just seemed to know. Like, you could just look at something and, like, he knew how to air it. He knew how to carve it. So, yeah, like, there are those dudes that do show up at your park and can just rip. I'm not one of those guys. I want to figure things out. I'll talk to the locals.
Yeah.
There's one instance in Sacramento in which we were doing this jam, and jams are always the worst because you're at someone else's park. They know all the lines. You don't know the lines, but they expect you to rip it. And I was just kind of watching the locals ride, and this local did this really cool line, like into the bowl, out of the side of the spine, and into another quarter. And I remember saying to Jay, I was like, hey, can we come back here tomorrow? I think I want to film that. So came back the next day and totally like bit this guy's line, and he shows up as I'm doing it, and he's like, oh, real cool, man.
Oh no, instant karma.
It was lesson in humility for sure.
Yeah.
And then I actually shot a photo on that setup that ended up on the back cover of Ride. So paid off, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because Sponge always brings up whenever this comes up how you did a giant 540 in the bowl out of the deep end. I didn't see it, but apparently he saw it happen from across the park where we were at.
That doesn't sound like me.
I have no idea, but
unless it was like a hurricane, but I'm not airing out a 540.
Yeah, I don't know. But the other thing that I remember from that is you doing a 5-tap to ice on the 7-foot quarter in that room. And I had already been into 5-taps at that point. So I'm sure when you did it first try, I was just like, oh my God.
Believe it or not, that used to be like one of my go-tos. Like awesome. Mid-contest run, I could be like, oh, I need something on the sub. Just like, I can't believe I ever had that trick that dialed. But it's funny how I haven't done it in a while, but like it can come back pretty quick. Like I have to maybe take 5-10 minutes, but once I got it, I can just kind of lock back into it. And
yeah, well, I mean, we did it at race on the spine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one, and I honestly feel like 5-tap to ice is easier than a 5-tap sometimes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I'm glad that I never asked you about that until now because it's just like one of those moments of like, I don't know who this guy is, and I really don't know who the guy that he's with is, but they both just killed the place, and I was probably 17 at the time.
I used to travel with Gary Young a lot, and I'd always tell him stories about my friend Yeagle from back home, and finally Gary comes to Pittsburgh, and Yeagle shows up at the park, And Gary's like, "Oh, that's him?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's him right there." And he goes, "I thought he'd be bigger."
That's funny.
That was his first reaction. I thought he'd be bigger.
I love that. I love that. That's like, you could tell where someone's headspace is at whenever they make a comment like that. Like, that's
Yeah.
what he's thinking about when he sees this guy who's, you talk about, like, the legend he is.
Yeah.
Where is Yeagle at, by the way?
Yeagle is a nurse here in Pittsburgh, and he is married. He just had a daughter who's probably 1 by now. Doesn't ride. He doesn't ride BMX, but he rides mountain bikes occasionally, and he rides with a good friend of mine who will like send me photos of him ripping on a mountain bike. And he's like, "Oh, look what Yeagle is doing," and it's Yeagle up a tree, and it's like, yeah, but he's on a mountain bike. And I'm like, yeah, it totally makes sense. But yeah, he just lives a pretty quiet life. Doesn't do much on social media, and yeah, just chill dude. I was gonna relaunch my podcast, and I wanted him to have the first interview. And he was totally on board with it. We had it all set up, and then like something happened with my schedule, something happened with his schedule, and I really want his one of his best friends is Randy Nickerson. I really want Randy Nickerson involved, because Randy will really keep the conversation going. And I still do want it to happen. It's just the time has to be right.
Yeah, it will. It definitely will. And to have that be the first one back will be sweet.
My buddy, Murphy.
Oh yeah.
Murphy broke his ankle over the summer.
Yep.
And I go, "Hey Murphy, is there anything I can do to help you out?" And he goes, "Do the Yeagle podcast."
I can see him pausing before answering that and then saying exactly the way you did. That's too funny.
Well, that was in text form, but it was just he's like, "Do the Yeagle podcast."
That's great. I forgot to shout out, hopefully he's still in here, Kurt Schmidt was in here for a minute.
What?
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Dang.
Yeah.
Heavy name.
So he's got a podcast. He brought up how Craig Reynolds has a good podcast apparently now.
There's some good ones out there, and I haven't gotten a chance to check out Craig's, but I would love to hear it. Like again, time. I just need time to be able to do these things. When I get my daughter has a playlist that we've made on Spotify, and anytime we get in the car, I want to listen to my playlist. I'm like, are you sure you don't want to listen to this BMX podcast? So
you don't want to hear about this guy that Dad knew 25 years ago.
Yeah,
that's great. Oh, he is still in here. He said, "Hey yo boys." That's great. So my next thing on my list here is, I want to know, and maybe you've talked about this, maybe you haven't, but because everybody knows you for, tables and turn downs, talk about those, but have you ever talked about like the experience of actually learning those tricks, and how easy or how hard it was?
Good question. I feel like turn downs took me forever to learn. Probably from like the time I was 14 until like 16.
Me too.
Like it took me a long time to like get it down to where like I felt like I could do it with confidence every time. I grew up idolizing and riding with this guy. His name is Corey Muth.
Yeah. And
Corey Muth rode for DK Bicycles back in his 16 to 18 expert class, and then actually started riding for Reynolds Racing, rode for Craig Reynolds. So one of the best, and I say this with all sincerity, one of the best styles on a BMX bike ever. And I hope that there's people in your comments that like know of Corey Muth, but literally one of the best styles ever on a BMX bike. And that's where I learned how to do turn downs, is watching him, because we rode together all the time. We're like he's like local hero. He was the local that was like in magazines. He was on props. But he had the best. He probably still does have the best turn down, and I learned everything I knew about turn downs from watching him. And he was the one that told me, is like, "Oh, you're trying to snap it off the lip. You need to wait till you get to your peak and then go into it." And like, he like gave me those tips that really, made it all work out.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, definitely hats off to Corey Muth. He's got this clip in an old props. He was like 16 expert racer and full factory DK, and it's from South Park, which is like the best track in the world. And he's leading the 16X like by 4 or 5 bike lengths. He comes out of the second berm and he jumps this big tabletop and he cases it just a little bit, just like a little tag, blows his feet off his pedals, and he can't hit the pro jump, so he has to roll it. And then this guy jumps right over top of him, and it's Joey Garcia.
Oh.
So Joey Garcia, who's factory Schwinn, jumps right over my buddy Corey and just takes the victory.
Oh my gosh.
So I still tease Muth about that, but yeah, that dude can ride a bike.
So it took you some years to learn turndowns.
It did not come easy. Actually, like nothing, like inverts and tables didn't come easy either. And I've heard other people say this, like when I was challenged by BMX, like it didn't come naturally to me. It was something I had to work for, and that's why I loved it so much. Like there were other sports that I was into that did come naturally to me, but like now here's this thing. It's all about you being an individual. It's you and your bike. That's it. I was so attracted to it because it wasn't easy. I've heard Kaczynski say things like, he's like, yeah, like football, hockey, they came easy to me, but like BMX was tough, and it still is. So, I had to work hard to get good at the things I was good at.
Yeah.
I learned how to do inverts, and then I lost it, and I had to like relearn them. And it was like this weird like 2-year hiatus of doing inverts, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna relearn how to do it. I got bigger bars, and it made it like so much easier to snap into it. And so yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. And then I feel like the guys that BMX did come easy to, like, almost didn't appreciate what they had, because like, yeah, you don't appreciate when it comes easy.
Oh, I feel like those are the people who end up falling out of it, that you hear they fell out and you're like, how did this person stop riding? I don't understand. And then you're like, well, you think about it, I guess it came really, really easy to them, so maybe it isn't the same.
Yeah, I always thought that way about Todd Wakowiak. I think he's like just gifted all around, like just academically, athletically, like he can just figure things out. Like if you want to figure out a trick, he's gonna figure it out like an hour before you'll even like be able to get off the ground. It's really amazing the way that like guys like him and even guys like Chris Bennett could just figure things out so fast. And I was always a little bit jealous, but then again, I probably wouldn't have appreciated it as much.
Yeah, I get it, man. Sometimes I still feel like weird when I leave the skate park and I'm like, man, or even the trails, like, I did not fall or stumble or anything one time today. But as I was growing up riding, I can remember one guy local to me making a comment like, man, you fall a lot.
Yeah.
And like that's just what it was. It was a challenge, and it wasn't easy to learn things, and I was full throttle all the time, so I'm falling all the time.
Same. I was hurt a lot as a kid.
Yeah, some people, I don't know. I'm happy with the way things went, though.
Yeah.
So with that being said, talking about turndowns and tabletops, do you have any thoughts, or have you ever pondered the like fact that like, or subject in BMX of how there are people, and a lot of people, who are like that guy? Like people look at you're the turn down guy. and I think that some people, especially some of the people who like live this, Gage Sharp, Gage from Cleveland, he's a hang 5 nose manual guy. I feel like he hasn't quite yet realized that like in BMX that sometimes is just a thing. Like people just want to see you do a nose manual and a hang 5, or people just want to see you do a turn down. Have you ever thought about like the turn down guy aspect of things?
I've thought about it. I don't think it's I don't consider myself the turn down guy. I think that all kind of stemmed from like Scotty Kramer's YouTube channel, in which like him and a couple of his buddies kind of pinned that on me, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine. I'll take it. I don't think I have the best turn down in BMX by any stretch of the imagination. I think I just do that trick a lot. I enjoy it, and I'm happy that if a kid comes up to me at a skate park, he'll 9 times out of 10 be like, "Hey, can I see a turn down?" Like
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yes, I can do that for you," because I love that trick. I enjoy it. Like I would feel terrible if someone's like, "Hey, can I see your 720 tail lip?" I'd be like, "Ugh." Like, or just a 720 in general. Like if someone's like, "Hey, I want to see a Chris Doyle 720," I'll be like, I can send you a clip."
Yeah, here's a link.
But yeah, I mean, if people want to see the turn down or the invert or the 360 versions, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to give that to you.
Yeah, I just have felt like a long time. I kind of realized at a certain point, I was the ice pick guy. When like that's just how people know who I am. Do way more than that, but that's just the way it is. But I realized at a certain level, like that to an extent is like what a professional BMX rider is in certain people's eyes, is like they're just traveling, figuring out, learning other tricks, but like they go to a spot or a jam and that's what people want to see.
Yeah,
That's part of why they end up where they're at.
I'm thankful to have something like that. I honestly, I'm very humbled by it. I don't think I have the best turn down. I just, I'm flattered that people think that way about me. And I think it was, I think it was Andrew Reynolds, the skateboarder, who said like, he's like, yeah, like if you're an X-Man or an X, if one of the X-Men, you don't get all the powers. You
Yeah.
get like one power, and that's your power. So,
Mm-hmm.
me and Dakota Roche have talked about that before, like, because he always talks about like all I ever do is wall rides, and
Yeah.
like that's your superpower.
Yep.
Like you don't get them all.
Yep. And I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. And I don't know. I feel like it's almost the kind of thing that if like somebody hears someone like you talking about that, it's like I've said for a long time, just find what you do best and do it better than anybody else, because that can take you places.
I think it's amazing. I get tagged in videos from like all over the world. Like Chris Doyle, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm like, yeah, I give everyone the thumbs up. I'm like, yeah, you're
Yeah,
killing it.
I've done that with you and no foot cans before. Like at the trails, that's literally my thing. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a Chris Doyle no foot can right now.
Oh, nice.
That's I don't know. I was just curious your thoughts on that, because it's definitely a theme. That was the word I was looking for. It's a theme in BMX where certain people have their trick. Brett Silva with a cannonball. That
Oh, dude, his toboggans.
Yeah, T-bogs and
Yeah,
cannonballs for Brett
yeah,
Silva.
he's sick. My buddy from back home rides mountain bikes, and actually my old roommate when I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina, he rides mountain bikes, and he's got his mountain bike crew, and like he's like he was riding trails with his buddies one day, and a guy hits a jump and does like a little cross up, because you can't really do a turn down on a mountain bike,
Mm-hmm.
but does like a little turn bar wiggle thing, and his buddy goes, "Oh, I thought that was Chris Doyle." And my buddy is like, "What?" He's like, "How do you guys know?" And he's like, "How do you guys know like Chris Doyle?" And they're like, "Oh, he's the BMXer." And my buddy who never rode BMX, like, "Oh yeah, I used to live with him. He was my roommate." And
That's funny.
he kind of tripped out on that for a second.
Yeah, that's too good. That's too funny there. Um, I had a request here. Can you give me a Section 8 story?
Oh man.
Is there one? I'm sure there's lots.
Um, I can't think of like a good like a entertaining one as much. I kind of started riding there more regularly, like after all the shenanigans had
Mm.
taken place. Not me and some buddies rented a van and drove up for the premiere. So we drove from Raleigh we actually drove to Pittsburgh first, stayed in Pittsburgh, and then the next day we went to the jam at Section 8. And it was there I met Catfish for the first time. I met Lou Bickle. I met Nate Wessel. Let's see, I met a variety of different characters, all from Section 8. And everyone went out that night, of course. And we had Colin Winkleman with us. Winkleman came up in the van, and we all go out, and none of us really drank, but Colin Winkleman drank a lot. So we go out after the premiere, and we all had a good time, and Winkleman gets obliterated, and we don't have a place to stay in Youngstown, and Catfish is like, dude, stay at my place. And we're like, oh, thank God. So we go back to Catfish's place in like downtown Youngstown, which is a grimy place. And we get in, and Winkleman immediately passes out, snoring. He's gone. He's done. He's super intoxicated. So we're all like trying to figure out where we're going to sleep in Catfish's apartment. And Catfish is like, hey, I'm going to go get some food. There's like a little soul food place down the street. If you guys want something, let me know. So I gave Catfish, $10. I'm like, yeah, grab me something because I'm starving. And he's like, yeah, I'll get you some like fried chicken or something. Like, yeah, sweet. So Catfish leaves, and then it's like almost as the door shuts behind Catfish, Winkleman pops up, and he's like, we're going back to Pittsburgh. And we're all like little starstruck kids that are like, okay, Colin Winkleman, whatever you want. Because he's like spoke with conviction. He's like, we're fucking going back to Pittsburgh. And so we load up the van, and it's like 3:00 in the morning. We drive back to Pittsburgh, and Winkleman, as soon as he gets in the van, of course, passes out again, and we're stuck driving back to Pittsburgh. We stay at Wachovic's place. The next day we get up and we're driving home back to North Carolina, and we're leaving Pittsburgh, and we're on the Liberty Bridge, and Winkleman's like, dude, you got to pull over right now. I'm going to puke. I'm like, dude, we're on a bridge about to go through a tunnel. I can't pull over right now. And he's like, Doyle, you got to pull over right now. And I can't do it. I can't do it. And so we get into the tunnel, and he's like, here it comes. We're in a tunnel, right? I can't pull over. Yeah. And he puts down the window, and the 4-pit tunnel is a little less than a mile long. And he just starts just puking all out the side of the van. And he's purposely sticking his head out far enough so he doesn't get puke all over the side of the van. And but he's just puking all over the car behind us. Like, I look behind us, and the car has its windshield wipers on, and it's like, using its windshield wiper fluid. And I'm just like, that is so disgusting. He puked for the entire tunnel. And it pretty much missed the entire van and just got right on the car behind us. And I was like, these people are going to fight us for puking on their car. And someone had put a legalized murder sticker on the back of our van. So I don't think they wanted to mess with us. So like, these guys have a sticker that says legalized murder, which is an old push sticker. But nevertheless, that's like, I know that's not like a Section 8 story, but that was like one of the first times that I really visited there. And that was like Colin Winkleman, like one of my favorite Colin Winkleman stories, just like the amount of puke that came out of this van in the 4-pit tunnel.
All over somebody's car. Imagine. So this is like what, 4 or 5 in the morning at this point, or is it the next day? Or
it's the next day.
Okay. Oh my.
It's like 10:00 in the morning, and or maybe not that early. It might have been later, because I remember this was the day in which they were demolishing Forbes Field, like the old baseball stadium.
Mm. So
there was a lot of traffic, and he puked all over the front of someone's car.
Oh my goodness. I think that story is probably good enough.
Well, and to this day, if I see Catfish, he's like, dude, I still owe you that meal. I still owe you that soul food meal, man. So
did you guys leave before he even got back?
Before he got back.
Oh my God. And this is probably before cell phones. So like, he's walking back like, what is even happening? They're gone.
He probably came into his apartment. He's like, he's got probably a bag full of food. He's like, where's everybody?
Yeah. That's crazy. And then would have had to wait to find out what happened.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a good story. With stories coming up, I saw a comment on Instagram this last week, and I don't listen, I'm not as educated in BMX as I should be, so you can forgive me if you've already talked about this, but I saw a comment about Rooftop hating you. Yeah, I don't know if this
About
can be talked about publicly, but I just wanted
about what now?
uh, the period of time where Rooftop hated you that you said ended up making you guys better friends in the end.
Where I hated Rooftop.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was that.
Yeah, I hated him for a couple days.
Oh.
Hated him. Um,
You
I
don't
don't even know.
have to tell the story or anything. I just wanted to bring it up because I saw that comment. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to save that in my brain.
It's super embarrassing
Oh,
for
well.
me.
Well,
I
then.
I'm the jackass in the story because I shouldn't have believed it. Um, where I didn't have Rooftop's number in my phone at the
Mm-hmm.
time, but we were out in Portland and I was doing some commentary for the Do Tour, and I get this text on my phone, and it's like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know your commentary was great today. Um, really appreciated everything that you brought to the table." I was like, "Oh, thanks, man." And I texted back and forth with this number that I didn't have, and I was like, "Well, who is this?" And this person on the other end of the line, who I later find out is Rooftop, says like, "Oh, it's who did he say it was? Oh, I forget the name that he used, but he said it was someone from Haro. He's like, "Oh, I'm putting together this new program for Haro. It's like, you know, for guys like yourself, and we really want to like represent like some of the older guys that can represent the older generation for Haro." And it like starts talking to me. We talked for like a couple hours, and just going back and forth. And then he's like, "Oh, you know, we'd be willing to offer you like a good, you know, lump sum of money, you know, 50,000 starting a year." And I'm just like, whoa. And I'm just eating it up. I'm like totally buying into all of it. And I'd actually even called Kink. I was like, "Hey, is this a deal I should be like considering?" And like, "Well, what are they talking about?" And I like kept texting him back, and he hit me back like, "Oh, here's the parameters of the deal, blah blah blah." And I'm like, huh. I was like, maybe I should do this. And I really thought like Haro was making me an offer, but it turns out it was Rooftop. And I was so embarrassed that I even thought for a second it was real. Because I'm so gullible.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a fucking idiot. And just the way that it made me feel, I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. And I like literally hated him for a couple days. And then like we slowly, because I like Rooftop, like
Yeah.
he's a good dude, but like he just got me so good. He bested me, you know.
Yeah.
And I should have known better. And yeah, that was what that story was about. That's what that Instagram
That's
comment was about.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I have one kind of like that, but not to that degree because I was probably a 16-year-old kid at this time. You know, I'm doing back rail foofs. I'm trying to go big. I'm stoked on bikes. And this local dude to me texts me and asks, and he's like talking about asking me if I want to go with him to this like event thing. I don't know how he described it. A thing in some other state. And like I'm a 16-year-old kid at this point, so I know I can't just like go. I have to talk to my parents and figure stuff out. And the way he puts it to me is like there's this energy drink company and all you have to do to get sponsored by them is go with me to this meeting event thing. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna need more details. I got to talk to my parents about this. I can't just agree to go to another state with you for something like this. So we set up a meeting, and he comes over to our house, and we're in the living room. My parents, him, and me, and he pulls out his Amway. Like, you ever hear of Amway?
No.
It's a pyramid scheme thing where you're
Oh,
selling
I
products.
have.
He pulls
Yeah.
out his Amway stuff and gives my parents the Amway speech
Oh
that
my God.
started as me supposed to be getting an energy drink sponsor for riding.
Wow.
And like there's no chance he's ever going to hear this, but like, this is a dude who, like, he's doing back rail foofs, doing the giant gap at the skate park, really amazing tech rider. And so I'm like, I'm going to believe what he's saying, because he's like, he's that guy. And this is what comes of it. And like, oh, it was not quite on the same level, because there's not like money involved with it, but your thing reminded me of that.
Yeah, man, I'm just too gullible, honestly.
Me
like,
too.
If you speak with conviction, if you like sound, if you can even spell correctly and text correctly, like, I'm like, oh, this sounds real.
I might have to look into this.
I like to think that I've gotten better at like weeding through the BS.
Yeah, dude, I sometimes I wish that my brain could be like that, like where Rooftop's brain was at in that situation, where he's like, oh my gosh, like, this is Chris Doyle and he doesn't have my phone number, and this is going, like, I wish I could make funny things like that happen sometimes.
He was also with a group of other like legendary professionals, guys like Jason Enns, who are all like, he's like, what do I say next? What do I say next?
Mhm.
Oh, everyone's like, say this. Like, so he had help.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just a jackass for buying it.
Hey, don't feel bad. I had one of the dudes who was coming to our trails locally literally convinced me that he had the best temporary tattoo that has ever existed, because it just wasn't going away after weeks and weeks of him coming to the trails, to the point where finally he's like, dude, it's a real tattoo. Come on. I'm like, well, I believe. Why would I think you're going to lie to me?
Yeah. We're just trusting souls.
Yeah, well, faith in people, you know? I got a lot of faith in people. You mentioned Portland. I'm really good at these segues. I've got a tentative one of these scheduled for Tuesday with Shad Johnson, who's in Portland. And I thought, because I don't know anything about BMX like I should, you might be a great person to see if there's anything that I should, any fun things I should ask him about.
That you gotta ask Shad about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I don't know Shad that well. If I'm being 100%, I know he lives in Portland. You could ask him if he sees my best friend Ryan Barrett very often. But no, honestly, I don't know what to tell you there. I don't know Shad that well.
That's totally
I like
fair.
Shad. Like, and anytime I've been around Shad, I'm like, this guy's awesome. But like, we don't know each other that well.
That is okay. That's enough for me. And I also just wanted to bring that up for anybody who watches this, to leave a comment about that too, if there's anything. It's like,
I'd like to know more about Goods. Is Goods still up and running?
Yeah, that's something we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of why.
What's Chester Blacksmith up to nowadays?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I got both of those and some notes here. That's part of like why I love doing these types of things, is because growing up, I literally didn't watch videos. I've seen probably 5 full-length videos ever.
Oh wow.
Never really. The only props I've seen are like stuff that's been online, and only a few things from it, because I was riding and making my own videos. So it's like things like this and conversations like what we're having and what I'll have with Shad are how I learn about BMX, and I just love that.
Well, do you know who Billy Dexter is?
No.
Well,
yeah. Enlighten me.
Really good rider from North Carolina. And he was kind of the same way. Like, he was super, super talented. And I just assumed that if you were into BMX, you were as much of a BMX nerd that I was. Because I watched every video. Mm-hmm. I read every magazine. And it was always funny being around Billy Dexter, because I'd be like, hey, have you ever heard of Chris Bennett? And he's like, who's Chris Bennett? I'm like, he doesn't know who Chris Bennett is. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
He's from like around the same area that I'm from. And I would always kind of tease him about how little he knew about BMX while being like an incredible bike rider.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. There's just something, I don't know the word for it. There's just something about people who are so entrenched in their own little world of just loving riding and they don't care about anything to do with BMX or the industry of it. All they care about is riding. There's something about that that I love when you hear about those people.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like a special thing that doesn't, because of the internet, they just don't really exist as much.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, with that being said, I was gonna ask you this a really long time ago, and you talked a little bit about with the whole S&M thing, but like, what's your experience of BMX like right now? What's BMX for you right now?
I'm a weekend warrior. I'm a dude with a job and a family, and I do it when I can. And I try to ride enough, at least, just to maintain a skill level that I can be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking to change the world. I'm not. I'm just trying to enjoy it, and go to a few jams here and there, and like I went to Posh and Caddy a few weeks ago, and I was like, wow, that was like a dream, just riding trails with all those dudes, and doing trains with Clint Reynolds and Brian Foster and Aloise, and it really stuff like that is what really gets me excited now, and yeah, just like I said, I'm a weekend warrior. I'm happy when I get to ride, and that's it.
Nice. Sounds like you're happy about that, though.
I, dude, there was nothing left for me as far as being a pro.
Yeah.
Like if I had made a list of like everything I wanted to accomplish when I was 16 years old, when I just turned pro, like I checked all those boxes, and there wasn't really much left. Like, what more did I need to do? Um, like I had nothing else to prove, and I think I was pro for probably a couple of years too long, actually. Um, so I was thankful for people that wanted to keep me around. So yeah, I'm satisfied. Like, I think it would be totally different if I had a pro career in which I accomplished nothing. Like, I think that would add to some resentment at this point in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I look back on all of that, and I'm just like, man, like in my little world, like I feel like I did it all. Like, that's what more did I need to do? I traveled. I made some of the most amazing friends. I still get to be involved with doing the commentary stuff, and I'm thankful for the moments that I had. I'm thankful for the people I met, and the things that I still continue get to do. To do, I get to I get an S&M with my name on it. Like, I'm like the luckiest guy ever. Like, so yeah, um, that's just kind of how I see it.
I think that's something to be proud of for sure, and it's awesome because not everybody gets to be stoked when things
Yeah,
come to a close like that.
yeah. Like I said, if I had done nothing, like I think I might have been a little bit resentful, but all my boxes were checked,
Yeah.
uh, and and I'm not saying this to fish for compliments, but I think I did a lot of it with mediocre talent. Like, I think that I tried hard as a pro. I think I, put in the work, but like there was always dudes that had way more talent than I had that just kind of came and went.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made the most of it. I was like, okay, like I'm never gonna be as good at something else as I am at riding. I need to like really drive this home. And
Yeah.
I made it to almost 40 as a pro. So um, I I think about that all the time. It's like, wow, like I was just like middle of the pack guy. I was never like, and that was kind of the era that I came into, was just like the golden age of opportunity, where you didn't have to be the best guy. You had to be okay. You had to be marketable, like, but you didn't have to win every contest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was lucky to come in at that time. I think I hit my stride around like 1920, and
1920.
well, 19, 20,
Oh, you said
20 years
those
old.
so quickly. I was like, what?
Like around the like 19 years old, 20 years old, like that's when I really started to hit my stride. I was like, I think I
Yeah.
got something here, and then just kind of went with it. And again, it's mediocre talent that I just, it's like, okay, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to try hard because I kind of like this lifestyle. But um, yeah, just very happy. I feel like I'm repeating myself now. So
That's okay. This has me wondering though, like, did did you find yourself, or were there things that you felt like you were doing to like maintain, like to keep yourself being a pro rider? Because the way I hear, it's so weird to hear people like the way Dak was talking about BMX in his podcast with Bobby Canode that came out this week, or the way you're talking about things. It's weird for me to hear these because like where I've gone in riding, I've never like I've never been like, all right, I'm going to do this and it's going to help me achieve this as a rider with this company. I'm literally the only companies that I've ever worked with work with me because of like what I'm already doing. So it's like, it's almost weird to think about from like a contest perspective.
um, I think this is gonna take away a lot of like hardcore credibility for me if I say
Oh
this,
no,
but
don't do it.
no, it's all good. I think the thing that I did to maintain a pro career, I think honestly was riding street.
Well, I mean, okay.
uh,
Now we can't, that doesn't take away any credibility.
9 times out of 10, anytime you saw me riding street, I really didn't want to be there. um, well, I shouldn't say riding street, filming on street, trying to get street clips, because
Yeah.
I always wanted to have a well-rounded video part, but I never really like wanted to ride street. I only knew the basics. I knew the double peg grind. I knew the feeble. I knew the manual. Like, and when you have only the basics, it's not very impressive. But it's like, oh, if I can do the double peg grind down a huge handrail, I'm gonna try that because that's cool to film.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be somewhere with the sponsor that flew me there to be there, and I'd be like, I gotta gather clips. We're riding street. I gotta do it.
Yeah.
And that's like the only time I felt like I'm really doing something I don't want to be doing, but I want my part to look a certain way. I want it to be well-rounded. So a lot of times on street, I was just like hucking and hoping that things would work out. Luckily for me, more often than not, things worked out. But like riding street was always like, oh, riding street again. Okay, let's go. That doesn't mean I don't have respect for the dudes that love riding street. It's just for me, it was just always so foreign.
Mm-hmm.
Like my bike was never like set up to ride street. I didn't have like the steep head tube angles. I was never going to be brakeless. And yeah, like this being said, like I have the utmost respect for those dudes that just crush it on street, because it was something I could never do and something I was never really that interested in doing myself.
Yeah.
Even though it's, one of the gnarliest aspects of BMX.
So
Are all the comments talking shit on me right now?
no, the last one though is, dude, you did a manual to second stage feeble. You're a beast on the street. What the F?
On accident.
Yeah, whatever. Well, I mean, there has to be a certain level of like, I know you know the feeling I'm going to describe right now. When you think of a trick and you're at the spot, and not necessarily street spot, but you're at the place to do that trick, and it's gnarly, but you have that thing in your brain that's like, all right, it's time. And then you get hot, your body starts to heat up, and you start to like, all right, this is real. I have to do it right now. And it's because my brain there was none of that riding street.
Oh,
there has to be.
Trust me, there was nerves. There was times when like I told J Rowe when I was riding for Kink, I was like, hey, let's meet up in North Carolina. I have some stuff I want to do there. And I knew it was on street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I knew I could do it. I knew it would look sick on camera. But I definitely felt out of my element.
Yeah.
But I had drugged the whole team to North Carolina, to Chapel Hill. And this is where I did the manual to second stage rail.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple clips planned that day. And I was just like, the whole team's there. Daryl's there. He's got 2 angles. He's ready to go. I'm like, what did I get myself into? And, luckily for that, I was able to give it a couple feelers. It was like 30 minutes. And then I was like, okay, it's go time. And like that thing was like perfect because it almost had a kicker. So I would like manual and it would like kick me up. It was almost like made for it. So I definitely had those butterflies. And I will say, even though riding street was so foreign, it was rewarding as hell to get a good street clip,
Yeah.
because it was like, okay, that's going in the part. I'd get like a couple street clips, and then I'd like reward myself, like, all right, guys, let's go to the trails now, because that's where I felt more at home. And so getting the street clips was very rewarding, but it was always like a mental battle, because there's that manual to second stage rail, and then right around the corner from that was a big gap to manual that I did. And I did these things back to back, because I was like, we're only going to be in Chapel Hill once. And in these areas, do you remember the clip of Josh Harrington riding along the ledge, and he gaps over and does the big over double peg?
I did see that one.
Okay. So that's the ledge that I did gap to manual on, and it's like my opposite way. So that was like right after the last clip. And like, so I'm like nervous. I pull it, I'm elated. I'm like, okay, thank God. I only have a second to like bask in that glory before we're at the next thing. And I was like thinking to myself, like, God, I hate street riding. But then I got that clip, and I was like, okay, I can breathe a little bit.
Over.
Like, so yeah, as much as I was like uncomfortable, to get those clips was really rewarding.
Yeah.
But anytime I was riding street, it was like I was only filming. Like, I was never like going to go out as a recreational activity and ride street. Again, I'm losing all my hardcore credibility.
Not at all. I think that there's a total difference, though, in that, like, you still had those things that you wanted to do, that you felt like compelled to get done. Even it's,
for the video part, yeah, for like making my part more well-rounded. And I saw Josh Harrington after he had done that big gap to over double peg down the kink rail, and he had the audacity to say, "Oh, the Doyle ledge." I'm like, dude, that's your spot now, man. Like, that is the gnarliest thing I've ever seen. He's like, "Oh no, that's the Doyle spot." I'm like, nah, man. Nah, don't
Maybe
even.
to him, but to everyone else, it's the freaking Harrington spot.
Dude, I was like, you took my name right off the list there. Like, that's all you.
Wow, that is.
Yeah.
I guess that's, I don't know, it's interesting to hear. And
like I said, street was always just a battle for me. It's like, okay, because I felt like anytime we were filming, it's like, I'm gonna get hurt. I'm gonna like do something stupid, and I'm gonna get hurt. But I'm a pro bike rider. I want to keep the sponsor happy. You just flew me across the world here. I'm gonna try to make my part the best I can. I'm gonna try to gather good footage. Meanwhile, a guy like Jay Rose, like, dude, don't sweat this stuff. Like, let's just go do some turndowns at the trails. I'm like, nah, I need this for my part. Like, I think my work ethic kind of trumped what I was enjoying the most with riding, and that pertained to street a lot of times.
Well, to be fair in what you just said about work ethic, though, I feel like it's that way for any pro BMX rider. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm not calling myself pro here, but it doesn't matter if it's a crazy spine variation where I'm tap dancing around the spine with taps and ice picks everywhere, or if it's me bucking up to do a feeble down a wooden handrail because I feel like I have to. Like, I more often than not reach a level of like, all right, this just became work. This is less about the like, all right, I'm having fun trying this, than it is the like, I have to get this done, and it's a job to get it done right now.
I've been there many times.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like most people who are in like your position in creating something like that, just they know exactly what that's like, because it's way different than just going out and having a session.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So any discrediting that you're talking about doesn't get to be discredited.
Well, yeah, people could just take a few snippets out of this interview. And
I hope so.
But yeah, that I'm just being honest. Riding street was like work, and filming stuff was scary. It was rewarding getting those clips. I was proud of those clips, maybe even more proud than any like trail stuff and park stuff. But like, it was scary. It was terrifying. I think a lot of the crew was scared too. Sometimes, like, I know Daryl's a very nervous guy, and we'd be looking at each other at the top of a set of stairs, like, all right, you ready? And he's just like, I guess.
Well, like, what's your approach to scary things? What, be it in the trails, at a street spot, or at a skate park? Like, I know there's people who just go for it and go right at it, or there's people who slowly work their way up. Like, how do you approach something scary?
I always looked for ways to slowly work my way up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was always a way for me to like, okay, if I can bail out of this once or twice, how am I going to bail? Um, if I need to. So I'd always like think about like the escape route. If I needed one, like if it was a transfer or something like that, I'd always think about like, okay, if things go south, how can I get out of this to where I don't get hurt?
Yeah.
And usually, and you could, and people watching could probably agree with this. Um, if even, just getting that first attempt out of the way for something scary makes a huge difference. You shake those nerves off, and it allows you to relax. Like, so you try something scary, you bail out first run. Okay, I tried it once. I kind of know what to expect. I know what the hop's like. It gets those butterflies out. And
It's possible now.
I know how the transition's going to send me. It definitely gets those nerves out. So, and sometimes you just pull things first try, which is great. But
Yeah.
more often than not, like my first attempt at something scary, I'm always thinking, okay, if things go south, how am I going to get out of this? Which might not be the best mentality to have, but that was always kind of how I felt about it. And that was one thing. I looked at the Austin Death Gap
Mm.
in Austin, Texas, and I remember looking at it. I'm like, I don't see any way out of this. Like, you have to lace this up perfect, or you just get jacked. Like, there's
Yep.
no way to, unless you went so slow that you landed in the grass.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking like, there's no way out of this. And that's kind of what like Sean Burns said when Jeff Slattery actually tried it. Jeff kind of, it didn't look like a bad slam. Like, it looked like, okay, the first one was a feeler, he bailed, now he's going to get up and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we all know he like broke his foot in half. So that's kind of like, Burns might have that same mentality too, but or maybe not. But when I looked at the Austin Death Gap, I was like, I don't see any way to get out of this safely, like unless you can just pull it first try.
Yeah.
I think that still might be true. I know it's not possible anymore because they built that wall down below, but I remember looking at it, I was like, I don't see any way to like take a first crack at it and like half-ass it. It's got to be perfect or absolutely nothing.
I'm trying to find some visual of the Austin Death Gap, and what comes up when you search it is a Twitter post by Empire it's in quotes, "The Austin Death Gap isn't a big deal. I'd try it if I was there." And then after it says, no, you would not.
I always wondered if like I bet like a guy like Brad Sims could probably do it. But then again, I don't know. Like I think it'd have to be someone that like has almost a trails background, that like knows how to gauge their speed when hitting a jump. But that's a jump like nothing else.
Can you explain the setup so I kind of get an idea? I don't know if I know it off the top of my head.
If you watch Jeff Slattery's part in Anthem 2, it's like his opening clip.
Oh, okay.
It's I'm gonna do a horrible job explaining this. It's like
well, I can watch that as long as it's online.
It might be. I don't know. It's like a 3.5 foot tall lip, and then
I got it.
Straight. Are you watching it?
Yeah. Well, I think so. It's Jeff Slater. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There is a picture of this online. Yeah, dude, you gotta go 1,000,000 miles an hour to clear that.
Or Jeff's mentality was that like if he went slow, the height, the big drop, like if he went slow, he could just kind of pop it up and then dive into the landing, just going a little bit slower. Because if you don't want to over clear that thing, and like the landing is so steep, if you overshoot that by only like a foot,
You're to flat, yeah.
you're gonna die. It's like, how do you want to eat shit? Like, do you want to go far? Do you want to land flat, or do you want to like come up short like Jeff did? Like, I think Jeff got lucky just to have a broken foot, but yeah, it's weird when you look at it because you're like, I know I could do it, but
Yeah.
but do I want to like put myself through that?
Did anybody ever jump that to the street?
I don't know.
I mean, from the video, it looks like it could potentially be possible,
I
but
think Aaron Ross has filmed a line like coming from the road and like hopping, like just using that bank up
gotcha.
top.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hadn't seen that gap before, and there's a lot of people saying Corey Walsh.
Yeah, Walsh should be good. Yeah, good like trails background, racing background. Can probably gauge his speed really good. Uh, Walsh, Chris Fox, Cordova, any of the fast and loose guys, really.
Yeah, there's actually a picture. I have no idea where it came from. I just see the picture here, and I saw this when I was googling it, but it's like a Google Street View picture of the spot, and then there's a dotted arrow showing like where someone would take off, and then an arrow pointing saying 16-foot tall landing that is 10 foot lower than this rail because it's from the street.
Yeah. No, that it had been talked about for years. Like, it was like another like urban myth. Like, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do it? And then, yeah, Jeff stepped up to the plate, and I think a lot of people saw it as like disrespectful if they tried it after him. But I think Jeff was like, no, I want someone to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't, and then eventually they built a wall right after the landing. So even if you did pull it, you're gonna go right into a brick wall.
Okay. So that's not going to happen.
Nah.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, man. Well, Doyle, you feel like we've covered a lot of things tonight?
Yeah,
I don't want
looked
to
at
keep
my
you
watch.
too long.
We've been chatting for a while, man.
Yeah, it's been a good hour and a half. So, with that being said, thanks for the chat.
Yeah, no problem, man. Hopefully your viewers enjoyed it. And yeah, I certainly enjoyed talking to you, Brant. Looking forward to the next time we get to ride together.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait, actually. We got to do another doubles thing because we're building a part at this point.
Yeah, let's do it next time.
Cool. And what's coming next for S&M real quick? Do you guys have any videos or anything cool that you're talking about doing?
I don't know. We're coming towards the end of the year. So I'm not really sure what the plan is for next year.
Okay.
They did just do their 35-year anniversary video. That should be out relatively soon.
Oh, yeah, Charlie's been working on that.
They just had their premiere, so that should be out soon. And after that, yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm kind of in the back seat of the car, I'm just like,
hey,
happy to be here, guys.
Muller's a good person to be driving the car you're in.
No, I agree. Like I said, probably one of the most influential BMXers of all time, in my opinion.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you sooner than later.